Let's bring in our panel, GOP strategist and host of the Front and Center podcast, Jacquie Jordan, and Kurt Bardella, publisher of the Watchdog Report Substack and co-host of the Party Lines podcast. Thank you both for being here today. Jacquie, I want to start with you. President Trump really highlighting those wins on crime yesterday in New York. He's also fulfilled his campaign promise of addressing the southern border by lowering the number of illegal crossings and has overseen more than 28% increase of the S&P 500 since taking office back in 2025. So are these victories for him and his administration enough to garner momentum for Republicans leading up to the midterms?
Oh, I would like to say yes, for sure, Jess. However, I think that this is going to be a little bit more nuanced in terms of the state. Taking Florida, for example, which is where I reside, we have the Trump-endorsed Byron Donalds, and literally candidate Byron Donalds has like every significant endorsement that you could possibly have, plus a $100 million campaign war chest. So he is, I think he's a 5 or 6 time Trump-endorsed candidate. However, part of the platform for Byron Donalds, which is part of the Trump administration, like I want to say like business plan, is that they took the tech industry out of the hands of Silicon Valley, Gavin Newsom's and the Democrats' hands in China, and repositioned it to future business here in Florida and more in the hands of the Republicans. So with $100 million of a campaign money, the vote, though, is with the Floridians, and that is kind of got a very different tenor, especially amongst the Floridian Republicans who are very pro-DeSantis. So, and the candidates that are up against Byron Donalds are really making very strong headway themselves. You've got James Fishback, of course, who is a 31-year-old zillennial running, and he says all the right things. Question is, does he have the experience for it? Is different, but he certainly has a following. And then you have Lieutenant Governor Jay Collins, who, Ron DeSantis has not endorsed, and that says a lot right there. And of course, you've got Paul Renner, who was a successful Speaker of the House when Ron DeSantis came into government, and they had a really successful tenure together. And Ron DeSantis hasn't endorsed anybody directly or specifically, he's definitely given the nod to Paul Renner. And then of course you've got other candidates coming in like Bobby Williams, who's also been very favorable. So and then what we're hearing from our polls are already open, and so people who are watching the polls are saying that there's a lot of votes going in for Fishback, Renner, and Williams, not so much for Collins, and definitely not from Byron Donalds, and that's the word on the street.
All right. Kurt, despite these wins, Trump's poll numbers are still sliding. A recent Reuters poll found more Americans disapprove of his handling of a number of different issues. So what can Democrats do to take advantage and really seize this moment?
Well, I think keep letting Donald Trump be Donald Trump. I hope that he goes to every swing district, every swing state, and goes out there and says, $4 for gasoline. You're just going to have to suck it up and take it. Too bad. That flies in the face of everything that Donald Trump and Republicans campaigned on in 2024 when they made the promise that there'd be no more Middle East wars, no more endless wars. We would take gas prices to record lows. Cost of living would go down. Affordability would be within reach. Housing costs would go down. And in fact, the exact opposite has happened. It has alienated him from a number of demographics that were key to the coalition that he put together in 24 and propelled them to victory. And now they're all turning their back on him. And so as a Democrat, I'm like, hey, put Donald Trump front and center everywhere, because if this election ends up being a referendum on Donald Trump, Republicans are cooked.
All right, so let's talk Alaska, Jacquie. Usually a lockdown seat for Republicans is potentially up for grabs. Incumbent Senator Dan Sullivan facing former Representative Mary Peltonen, well known for flipping Republican seats. So how do you see all of this playing out?
Well, Alaska is tried and true in terms of red, but I think what is interesting is going to actually be between Alaska, Wyoming, and Florida is the actual overall issue coming out of the primaries is going to be about data centers. And, it's an initiative, of course, that our president sees great value in, and I know that the voters themselves see the same value. I know that, again, in Florida, we failed to pass the AI Bill of Rights bill through House Speaker Daniel Perez. So if Alaska gets flipped, I definitely would say that as Republicans, we will be nervous, sweating under the collar come November. However, I have real confidence in Alaskan voters.
Okay, so Kurt, what do you think about the Alaska race?
Yeah, again, I think that like so many of these races throughout the country, it is a referendum on the current Republican majority. And if people believe that the Republicans have met expectations or failed on the expectations they set, they have complete control. White House, state houses, Senate, House, and yet they fail to deliver with the American people. And the only thing Republicans seem to be able to say right now is beware of the socialists. And I'm going to tell you, that's not going to get the job done. That's not enough. You got to tell people what you're for. You got to tell people what they're going to get for the investment of their vote. And Republicans have systemically failed to be able to do so. Their closing message seems to be, yeah, we know things are a little bad. Things are a little worse than expected. You're just going to have to suck it up and be grateful that Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon and you're paying $4 at the tank for gas. Like, okay, good luck with that argument.
Right. So, Jacquie, let's go to Wisconsin now. They just saw its highest Democratic midterm primary turnout in more than 2 decades. So, should Republicans be concerned heading into November?
Well, I definitely know that the Republicans don't want a repeat of the previous administration and previous leadership in terms of the Democrats. I think that was really rough on the domestic front in a lot of ways that we definitely don't want to re-experience. And those policies have not advanced in terms of what their conversation in the campaign is about. And say what you will about the Republicans, at least the needle moves forward in terms of the advancement of policies and positioning, and then that gets brought out to the voters, and then the voters, of course, have the opportunity to decide.
All right, Kurt, your thoughts. And we know, Democrats got 2 very different messages this week. A progressive won the Senate and primary in Minnesota, while a moderate narrowly beat a Democratic socialist for governor in Wisconsin. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Democrats are the Big Tent party, that we can be the party that has a Mandami, but also a party that can have a recovering Republican like David Jolly win a nomination, perhaps in Florida, and obviously what we're seeing all the way out in Alaska. And that's what it's going to take in this time, to have a Big Tent party that can unify on things like, yeah, no more unlimited AI data centers, no more big tech and billionaires being able to dictate all the policies in our country and draining all of our resources. It's a very populist Democratic party right now. And I think in a midterm election, the one thing we've seen going all the way back to 2018, when Donald Trump's name isn't on the ballot, Democrat turnout goes up, Republican turnout goes down. And Republicans have yet to figure out what to do about that. The enthusiasm is overwhelmingly with Democrats in this election. That's why you're seeing turnout at a record level right now in these primaries. That's good for Democrats as we look ahead. And even in places like in Texas, where I live, we are seeing very real, very tangible enthusiasm for James Tallarico. Ken Paxton's in trouble out here.
Right. Kurt Bardella, Jacquie Jordan, appreciate both of you and your time. Thank you so much.
Have a good rest of your weekend.
Too.
Leadership,
More